Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. Greg Chris, along with Frank Fear. Frank, we got another, what I think is going to be a fantastic show tonight. I can't wait for this one. But before we get into that, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention our baseball team. How about those ears?
Boy, I'll tell you, have we seen a better three-game series than what we saw last weekend? When you thought the Mountaineers were out of it, they just came back. And I'll tell you, when was the last time that a 9-hole hitter, Armani Guzman, out of New York City by way of Georgia, 9-hole hitter, was named the most valuable player in a tournament like that? And, I listened, you probably saw him too. They interviewed him after the game. Just an incredible guy, and great weekend if you're a Mountaineer.
Oh, yeah. And, watching those games that, you and I had talked a week before about hoping they can rekindle that magic that they had during the season where they may fall behind, but you always felt like they had a chance to win. Last 2 or 3 weeks, it didn't feel that way. They'd fall behind, and it's over. Or they'd be ahead by a couple of runs, and we were waiting on a disaster to hit. But they got back to their old ways, and, man, that was exciting. Especially, I know the Clemson win was huge and big upset. But that Kentucky game, the final game was fantastic. That was just an exciting game from both teams. I mean, it was back and forth, and W pulling it out at the end there. That was just exciting times. It'd really been cool if we got the Super Regional, but hey, it is what it is. And Little Rock was ahead for a while, but couldn't maintain.
Well, it always comes down to pitching, doesn't it? And Little Rock got out to that 5-1 lead. I watched the game the night before. They actually beat LSU at LSU. By the way, we were looking at financial data earlier this week, and LSU puts a lot of money into their baseball program. That stadium is almost 11,000 seats. It's going to be rocking this week, but then they brought out a pitcher. I'm trying to get his name here. Let me see, I've got it here. Oh, Kason Evans, and he really shut the door on Sunday. And Little Rock, which came into the tournament with a losing record, even though they won their conference tournament, just couldn't do it. And this weekend, it's going to come down to pitching too.
Yep, and I feel like I cursed him. That's the way I am with watching WVU. I feel like every time I turn it on, something bad happens. Well, Little Rock was up 5-1 or whatever the score was at the time, and I switched it over. Within a matter of 5 minutes, LSU would come back and tie the score. So I turned it off again. I was like, all right. And I watched West Virginia's games like this. So I just don't want to watch, And I thought Little Rock just when they brought that pitcher in, they just shut them down. And I think Little Rock kind of they ran out of pitching. They just kind of ran out of steam there toward the end. But it was they gave them a battle, and they beat them once, which goes to show they're not unbeatable. And West Virginia's played pretty well on the road, so it's gonna be exciting. And of course, everybody's gonna have their aces ready to go, so it should be a fun time, fun to watch.
Yeah, expect to see Griffin Kern take the mound on Saturday. He's just terrific. He closed the door. A terrific win on Monday when he came in, and Sunday rather came in on and just hit the corners beautifully. The thing about LSU is you might expect they just have just loads of stars. In fact, I saw an article earlier this week. I think they were ranked second or third in the country in terms of the number of major league prospects on their roster. They've got a bunch of guys that are hitting above 300, and I think 5 pitchers or 4 pitchers that have ERAs below 4. And a guy by the name of Cade Anderson, who has 16 starts this year, probably will go on Saturday. And then Anthony Iacin on Sunday. They're both really good pitchers. And so, got to have our hitting shoes on again. Keep it up. But the enthusiasm, Greg, you know this, particularly after the way the basketball season turned out. And to be able to have this as a bridge now to football season has given the fans something to really root for. This is a solid team, and it's a lot of fun.
Yep, everybody's excited about it. It's a lot of buzz going on around these parts, so it's going to be fun. Oddly enough, football is that's kind of calmed down a little bit here in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Basketball, same way. I know we're still signing people, but all that noise is quieted just a little bit. So don't have a whole lot to talk about there. I don't know if you have anything to add. It just seemed like all of a sudden, the faucet was turned off, and of course it wasn't like we didn't get flooded early. And finally, some of the transfer, the portal people, have been signed and picked up. I still feel like he's going to go after a few more, but at least that's calmed down a little bit now. I think maybe in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks we'll start getting a feel for that depth chart we talked about and how worried we were about that. I think we'll be able to zero in on that just a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, and I shouldn't say it, but I will. There's not a lot to be said about WVU football right now because clearly it's in a transition period. Most of the players we haven't seen before, we're not quite sure, and we've covered it. I mean, Mark Parsons did a great job. Keenan Cummings did a great job of laying out from their perspectives what we have. But this is one of those years where you're not going to really know until you actually see them on the field, see them perform, and then you can make your own judgments. I think the same thing for basketball. In fact, the big news this week is Saban signed a quality outfielder out of the portal, and so I think it's baseball right now. And the thing that's crazy, we don't have a lot of time to wait for football because it's coming at the end of next month.
So that's right. It'll be here, as they say, it'll be here before we know it. And
that's right.
Of course, we can't wait. We always look forward to that. Without any more discussion on that, let's get on to our guest. I'm anxious to get this guy on here and get him talking. And you send me, of course, it's going to take. I'd like to have the whole hour here to talk to him. You sent me some information about him, things I didn't know, and I've been reading through that, and I'd love to read this as part of his intro. It may take me an hour or two, but I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway because I think it needs to be read. He's from Oklahoma, former nose tackle in the Arena Football League of the Springfield Wolfpack. He's co-host with Cassie Stevens on podcasts prior to the snap. I listened to one of the episodes today, and I'm telling you right now, if you get a chance to go listen to it, you need to go listen to it. It's a lot of fun, a lot of information, good information. But more than anything, it's just a good time to listen to it. It was easy to listen to, fun to listen to, a lot of laughing. And it's Texas Longhorn fans will forgive him for that. We won't hold that against him. He also follows Oklahoma and the SEC and the Big 12 in football. He's a columnist with the Sports Column, voiceover commercial actor for KFOR TV. 2024 OKC Entertainer of the Year Stadium Announcer. And I can understand that, and I can believe that for the Oklahoma City Dodgers, AAA Baseball Club, and he's flashed that World Series ring that he got last year as part of that organization. So that's pretty cool in itself. 2023 City of Edmond Award for Champion of Character, 2019 Community Service Award, also in Edmond. So without further ado and without taking up another half an hour, let's welcome our guest, LaShaun Pryor, to the show. Welcome, Sean. It's great to have you here.
It is amazing to be here, but let me just say, you guys made me sound way better than I am. Like, wow.
Everybody can already tell this guy's going to be good.
That is the craziest. I was listening to that, and I was like, who the heck is he talking about? I know he's not talking about me. No way. It is a privilege to get to be back here again, by the way. I can't believe you guys brought me back for as loud and crazy and fast talking as it was last time. I can't believe you guys did this again, so thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you, and it's a pleasure, and you love, and I know you know this, when you have guests that will talk on a talk show, it's awesome. One of the things I always struggled with when we did this before is we do a lot of high school kids. Man alive, talk about pulling teeth. Now that was a tough deal. So let's and I think Frank kind of gave you an outline of some of the things we want to talk about. We're all concerned with what's going on in the world of college athletics. We've talked to several different folks about, this House settlement, what's going to happen after that, how all this is going to unfold, where we're headed. And I know a lot of people, a lot of fans are just really concerned about where this thing's going. And now latest, the SEC and the Big Ten basically flexing their muscle and saying, we're going to do what we want to do. I think people are even more concerned. I think that's a power play myself. I don't know that they'll do that, but I think they want to let everybody know that they're running the ship right now. So we want to get your take on all this and just see where you feel like things are and where they're heading.
Can I give like a parental advisory? I'm not going to swear or anything, by the way.
Go ahead.
Man, the dump site. You're good there. But, I saw that outline and I spent some time with it, really looking it over. I made some nice notes and I realized something, that some of this we probably are not going to line up on. And so I think it's going to make this conversation even better. I am so excited.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Now Frank's he's our academia. He's our smart guy on this broadcast. So if we have a debate, Frank, you got to dump in. I told you I peaked out 7th grade, so it's all on you when it comes to debate. But Sean, what do you think? I mean, where do you think that all this and not what I mentioned with the realignments, things like that, but like with the transfer portal, for example, something's got to happen there to get this under control. It's just it's a mess right now.
It is. The first thing that you talked about was the state of college football. And I hope that everybody watching this, everybody in sound of all of our voices, knows that college football is still good, right? When we sit down on a Saturday, we're still going to have our snacks. We're still going to wear that beat-up jersey that we know is lucky. And college football is still college football. There are some parts of it that look a little bit different. There are some things that change, but at base, it's still college football. And I surely hope that people, especially right now in 2025, don't feel jaded or concerned that we're losing college football.
Right. Yeah. I don't think that, we've talked about that a lot. I don't think that, as far as we're concerned, that we're losing college football. I don't think we think that. I think the, concern from a fan's perspective, like Frank and I have talked numerous times, I know you root for the name of the jersey on the front, but at our age, we grew up. I knew the names of all 5 offensive linemen and defensive linemen, and because they were there for 4 or 5 years. Now it's a revolving door, and you don't know from one year to the next. Are we going to be any good? Are we not? And I think that's the big concern, is that it's just so hard to lock in and follow your team when you don't really know who your team is.
So that instability, I love that you worded it that way too. I think one of the hardest things for me, and obviously it's going to be for you too, because we're clearly it's that purist mentality, right? We don't get to watch the growth and the maturation. We can pick out kids that we saw come in as freshmen. We watched them as they flipped the hats around on the table on signing day and everything, and we saw when they came into the program as a freshman and maybe they redshirted and they held a clipboard, but we got to watch that maturation over the years so that when they left as like a senior, we felt like we watched them grow. And that is definitely what we're lacking, right? That's definitely, it's so hard to, it's not hard to have a team, right? Because we all have our teams. It's hard to follow that team with that same closeness due to that instability, and I don't want to blame it squarely on just NIL. I think it's a perfect storm of different things in college football that are currently causing the grass is greener on the other side to be the order of the day.
Okay. Yeah, and we talk about growing programs like that. I think that's a concern for say a West Virginia fan as opposed to a Oklahoma Sooner or Texas Longhorn fan. if you look back during the Neyland years at WVU, one pattern you noticed is like every 4-5 years, they'd be really good. And, a place like West Virginia, it's hard to attract, that top-notch athlete all the time. Whereas, Oklahoma with the history and Texas with the history, it's not a hard thing for them to do typically. And, I think one of the things that concerns fans like us at West Virginia is we can't draw those people. We're not going to be able to compete, if we can't build our program, because that's what we live on, and so that's a concern from us.
And it's hard because I don't want to run away with this conversation because there's 10 different things that I want to say right now, right? There's 10 different directions that we can go with this. So, when you think about it, I'm going to use a current example. And this is something I didn't watch a lot of baseball with all the baseball stuff that's going on right now. I've been locked in on the Women's College World Series, and not just because it's here in Oklahoma, not just because my Longhorns are in it, but because of Texas Tech. The Texas Tech Red Raiders did something important at the beginning of the season, and I bet you know what that $1 million thing is. Kennedy, that pitcher, right? And I said early on to a lot of people, I said, they have spent a lot of money on football. They've spent a big chunk of cash right here on softball. And I said, can they effectively buy a national championship? Can they do it? Other teams have tried in other sports, right? Ohio State, which they spent a lot of money. It worked out for them, but can they buy a natty, right? Oklahoma, 4 in a row so far, huge to try to topple that giant. But in the end, it was that $1 million arm. And I realize, I know that that's the thing that scares us most. I have been doing my best to not bring up the name Nico, right? Tennessee, Josh Heupel's Tennessee, Nico. I always butcher this poor kid's name, Nico Imabiala. I hope I said it right. Sorry, Nico. We watched him set out, right? Frank, you can be an agent in college football right now. You know that in the NFL, right, you have to pass a test. There's all these different things that you have to do to be a real certified agent in the NFL. Right now in college football, Frank can be an agent. We can all be an agent. And that is one of the things that I feel like is so dangerous and is what's going to mar Nico. But also, I was watching a couple episodes ago of this very show. And Frank, you said one of my favorite things. Cassie has said it over on my show. I don't want the government in my sports. I do not. There is no reason for it. However, it's starting to feel like someone's going to have to rein in certain things. I did not want to see us have to have a CBA. I didn't want us to have some kind of unionization of college football players. But now I'm starting to think, you know what? It may actually become necessary. And I hate as a purist to say that. At the same time, this ball ain't going to stop rolling. We've let Pandora's boxes wide open. We've all seen all the contents, and we ain't closing it.
No, you're right. And, one of the interesting things we had on our show a few weeks ago, we were talking about the House settlement. And, basically, Frank and I'm speaking for Frank and shouldn't, but kind of thought, well, we get that House settlement taken care of, then maybe we can figure some things out and get this settled. And but we were informed that they may do the House settlement, but none of the things that they were doing prior to the House settlement coming about has changed. So they're going to continue to do the same thing. So he felt like if they continue to do the same thing, we're going to continue to have lawsuits and House settlements on down the line, and it's not really going to change anything, which is concerning. But yeah, the money part of it, and I think we're all in agreement that kids need paid. There's no question in my mind that they need paid, but I just feel like there's got to be some sort of structure to it. Some sort of guidelines, limitations. I don't know how you want to phrase that, but it would seem to us that there has to be, and I don't want to forget my point here in just a minute, the level playing field, for everybody. and which I want to get to here in just a minute. A question about that, and maybe I'll get our debate started. But anyway, as far as the money is concerned, what do you think? I mean, what can they do to fix that?
The one thing we're lacking, if I had to pick a word, that word would be transparency, right? We are lacking any type of form of transparency, of uniformity. We have no idea what's going on, right? This guy says one thing, this guy says another thing. And I think that's what we need most. But right now, with the conferences wanting to pull out little swords and stab each other in the legs and everything else, I think it's hard for us to be able to come together and find the common ground that we need to allow us to be able to do this, i.e., ergo Tennessee, and those janky little state laws that they want to pass, and Tennessee wants to do what they want to do. And what is the judge's name? Goodness gracious, Claudia Wilkin. Her thing where she said, if there's a school that doesn't want to play ball in your conference after we do all of this, we'll just kick them out. And so there's so much murky water here, like. We are wading so deep into it, but the transparency is what we need, and we need everybody to agree unilaterally, that, look, we can do X, Y, Z. We're all going to do X, Y, Z, and everything's going to be fine. I find it hard to believe that that's going to happen.
And Frank, I want to get Sean's opinion on one more thing here, and then I'll give you some time or quit taking up all the time. But, we mentioned, or I mentioned at the beginning about the muscle flex of the SEC and the Big Ten, and how I thought that was just a flex. But in all seriousness, we talked about this, and I've said this numerous times. I would think that even if you're an SEC Big Ten member, you sit down, you look at the whole picture, that it's going to be probably in the long run more beneficial to both the SEC and the Big Ten and everybody else to include everybody, as opposed to, okay, we're going to do our own thing here. We're getting out of the NCAA. Y'all can do what you want. Maybe that's a, I'm looking at it with optimistic eyes, and maybe with my heart and not my eyes. But I would think that the pie is going to be so much bigger if you have everybody involved. I would think. I don't know how people from your end feel about that. But I would like to know.
You are my hero for bringing this up. No, this is great. You are my hero. So there's two schools of thought on this, okay? There's two different ways that I feel like we have to look at this situation. The SEC and the Big Ten are obviously bloated, heavy with talent. And look, I want to openly say this. I don't feel like a lot of people that are fans, because it is very hard, I think, to be a fan and to be an analyst, because people say that you lose the ability to be able to be objective. I feel like I get to stay objective because I'm a Texas fan that physically lives here in Hostile, Oklahoma, and covers Oklahoma. So I get a nice balance. Here's my thing. There's a couple of people that we need to blame for this. Number one, the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. That's your patient zero right there for why we are where we are. That desire to, hey, let's pick up, let's get up out of the Big 12, let's run out to the SEC. Grass is greener. There's more money. There's all this stuff going on, right? Now, I'm not saying that either team was wrong. Hitched their wagons, it seems, in a great way. But then you had this cataclysm, right? Kalivikov was the commissioner out there of the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever. I don't even remember what they were anymore. That's sad. And they got to cherry pick, right? The Big Ten, Sankey out there in the SEC, they got to cherry pick those teams when that whole thing fell apart and say, well, I definitely like Oregon and look at UCLA, and let's look for the power, right? Where the Big 12, which when I was on here last time with you guys, I sung the praises of Brett Yormark, and I'm going to kind of, and I want to make sure I talk about him too, but first the SEC part. I think that the SEC made what I guess would be great moves for themselves, right? I mean, they said, hey, look, here's an opportunity. I can capitalize. We'll scoop up these teams. Let's do these things. That's great. It's great. I think that Sankey, while it looks extraordinarily selfish, I will agree with you guys. It does. I had to stop as I was doing my notes for this, and I had to say to myself, all these different things are being said. I know Feinbaum and other people like, hey, bruh, just go do whatever it is that you want to do. Just go head on. You know, at the end of the day, Sankey's job is to be the commissioner of the SEC. It's to make the most money, to do the most good. And as selfish as it looks, he's doing his job, right? He's doing his job to the nth degree. Now, that is, I think the situation looks worse and is further exacerbated by the fact that the NCAA is quasi-toothless. If the NCAA had rolled out all of these things at first, when they first said, hey, we're going to do NIL, we're going to do these things, you know, the profit share, all of this stuff started, had they have rolled these things out correctly and with bumpers and safeguards, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, right? We would have already know kind of what's going on, and I think we'd have a lot more harmony within the conferences because there's so much up for grabs. There's so much power that is out there that's available. I think that it's easy for the Big Ten and the SEC to do what they're doing and to say, well, you know, look, I mean, you know, hey, it's us against the world. Grab everything. You know, hey, the 11-5 model sounds great. Screw the Big 12 and the ACC. You know, and it makes it easy. But on the other side of this, Brett Yormark, he's been too quiet for me. As somebody who still loves the Big 12, right? I still love what's going on in the Big 12, but I warned before. I said, where is your anchor, right? You take out Texas and Oklahoma. A lot of people thought maybe it's going to be Oklahoma State. Maybe it's going to be BYU, you know, maybe it'll be the Utes, maybe it'll be West Virginia. Who knows? All these different thoughts and questions, but I feel like that anchor is not there. Brett Yormark, I have said that he's the used car salesman of college football. That guy's done genius things with trying to get Gonzaga to come to the Big 12. He's tried to get multiple teams, especially behind basketball, to come to the Big 12. He went up to the Rucker up there in New York at Rucker Park, redid that whole court and started a pipeline program to get the best basketball players, help to get them scholarships into the Big 12 to bring the best talent to the Big 12. But why is he not making as much noise about football? He's not as noisy. And now you have people here today that are really piling on. Does the ACC and the Big 12 need to merge? Do they need to come together to make a more powerful phalanx against the Big 10 and the SEC? I don't know. But I question that because he's always been he's a great businessman. I mean, he's good at what he does. And so I'm very confused with his what feels relaxed. Maybe he's not, but it feels like he's relaxed. And I feel like it's kind of a letdown, which is why I brought up Okalivikoff out there. You know, if you're too chill, if you chill too much, you can get eaten up. And I don't want to see the Big 12 that I have loved for years. I've been a Texas fan for 25 years. I have rooted for everything from, golly, now that I think about conference realignment happened years ago. But either way, happened a long time ago. But, you know, just I want to see this work. I want to see the Big 12. I want to see the ACC get their share. But I am concerned that if they don't do something, you guys are going to have a problem.
That's what we kind of fear. Do you see a day when, you know, like you said, the NCAA is toothless and has been, you know, very reactive instead of proactive. They always have been. It's just more or less they've been a punishing organization, and that's been about it. Do you see a day where, you know, maybe all these minds meet and say, you know what, we don't need the NCAA. We need a commissioner. You know, we need a commissioner to run things and you know, do it on their own. And I don't you know, I don't know why they wouldn't, to be honest with you, at this point in time, because, you know, what is the NCAA doing? They've done nothing to help in any way in any of this situation. And you know, I always compared him to Edgar Berger on Ironsides. You're probably too young to know who that is, but Ironside was a lawyer and he never lost a case. I think he might have lost one to Edgar Berger. So Berger lost every single time. I always said that's the NCAA. They just throw up their hands because they know they're going to lose in court, but yet they continue to do these things. Do you see a day when everybody's just like, you know what, screw the NCAA, we're doing this on our own, and maybe getting a commissioner? You know, again, Frank and I've talked about you know, aligning this thing in a divisional way like the NFL does. You know, recreate your local rivalries and all those types of things. I mean, you just think about, and this is what I keep thinking about. You think about the the revenue that would be generated, if you had that, an Eastern division, a Northeast division, a Southeast division, Midwest, Southwest, Northwest, Southwest. I mean, you just think about the rivalry games you would have, the attention it would get from people. Because, when I watch a game, I don't watch a game and think, oh, this is the SEC versus the ACC. I don't ever think like that. I know these SEC people, they always chant SEC at their games, but I've never looked at it that way. I mean, I look at Alabama and LSU playing each other. It's going to be a hell of a game right there. That's the way I see it. And I don't, the conference thing, I guess to a lot of folks and money wise means a lot. To me, it doesn't, but it just seems like it would be so beneficial and so attractive revenue wise to talk about that, divisional thing and the local, your rivalries getting back intact.
You know what's sad about what you just said? We are three human beings, three guys. People are watching on a telephone, on a computer, on a television, wherever. Three square boxes talking. And literally, you just solved the entire problem. But you're going to tell me that the NCAA or whoever the body could be can't do this. But three squares on a screen can discuss that right there and say, hey, let's just do this. Break it up as a regional model. You're good to go, AFC, NFC style. Let's do this thing and let's call it good. That makes no sense, does it?
No. And Frank and I have talked about if they would just give it to us and let us go, we could fix it in probably a week. Now we could include you, so we can cut it down to 3 days and have it fixed. Frank, jump in there.
Well, I'm glad you brought up, Sean. I'm glad you brought up the Texas Tech softball situation because that's not minor. That's big time. Here we're talking about softball, not a major sport, not a revenue-generating sport in the way it is becoming, just like baseball, when we think about basketball and football. But here, you said it, is Texas Tech seeking to buy a national championship. And my God, they beat Oklahoma, which had, won 4 in a row, going for their 5th. And now they're up against Texas. So it's big time for them. I think the NCAA did the right thing. They were not going to be able, no matter who the president is, get all those schools and conferences to agree. So what they did is they went out and got Charlie Baker, and they rolled the dice on regulation. And they had some people who were mighty interested in helping them. Manchin, our senator, was interested. Tuberville from Alabama was interested. Even Chris Murphy from Connecticut was interested. And there were others too. Cory Booker, who played at Stanford, was interested. But, the Congress has a lot of fish to fry, and it didn't go anywhere. And they've been trying that for a while, but they really did. It was a goal line stand. The bottom line, I think, is this. We as fans are going to have to adjust to the implications of a huge money sport, billion-dollar sport, both sports, basketball and football, and now the minor sports. ESPN is going to be showing those games all weekend long this weekend in baseball. And we have to be able to hope that those of us associated with the ACC and the Big 12, not to speak of the other schools, will be able to act strategically when they have an opening or create an opening that they can then be strategic. The 800-pound gorilla in the room right now in that regard is the 16-team football playoff. We're going to go to a 16-team football playoff. That's not even a question anymore. The question is, what is going to be the model? And there are two very different models. One model essentially gives the Power Four one slot each, and a group of 5, the best of the group of 5, one slot each. Okay? And another model essentially gives the Big Ten 4, the SEC 4, the ACC 2, and the Big 12 2, and then the rest are at large. And the Big 12, and this goes to your point, Sean, and there's plenty of evidence, just do Google it. The Big 12 likes the model that is the 5+11. In other words, one team from each of the power conferences plus the best group of 5 team, like a Memphis, and then the next 11 are at large. And if you do a Google search, do your homework, you'll find people like Tony Altomore, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, said that is a bad decision, Big 12, because you're only going to get your one slot. Those at-large slots are not going to go to Big 12 teams. Now, that's speculation, but the point is the train has left the station. It's money. It's loads of money. And let's face it, the Cincinnatis, the Central Floridas, the West Virginias of the world, okay, the Wake Forests, right, the Vanderbilts, that's where Vandy gets an advantage. They're in the SEC. But the point is they can't compete with the Southern Cals, the UCLAs, the Washingtons, the Penn State, the Michigans, the Ohio States. They just can't. Think about the SEC, and I'll stop about this at this point. If the SEC wanted Florida State, if the SEC wanted Clemson, if the SEC wanted North Carolina, they could have had them 7 weeks ago Thursday. They don't want them. That shows you how powerful the SEC is and how they believe that they can play the game effectively with the cards they have. They don't need to poach anymore. They don't need to see the ACC go out of business. And the bottom line is, Sankey won't say this, but I can't think of one team that is in the Big 12 now that the SEC would want. There are 3 teams in the ACC they could, but they don't want Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State doesn't fit the academic profile of the SEC or the Big Ten, for that matter. They don't want Kansas State. So I think what it does is it puts pressure, as you said, on the commissioner of the Big Ten, the commissioner of the ACC, and also the athletic directors to be uber smart because they just can't bring the same amount of money. They can't. And right now, with the media backing, and it just goes to show you, as good as Indiana was last year, you're not going to make a ton of money on Indiana playing in the college football playoff. So they're going with brand. This is a brand game. It's the USCs, it's the Michigans, it's the Ohio States, and we're just going to have to figure out a way to function in that environment, because I don't think regulation, I think that's over. I just don't think it's going to work, and I don't think there's any way, save having a Nick Saban as commissioner, that you're going to have a person who has enough power to be able to get the SEC and the Big Ten in line. It ain't going to happen.
No, that is perfectly spoken. No, you're absolutely correct. This is why I brought up Brett Yormark and why I said I had my concerns. And I brought up that anchor word earlier in the Big 12, because I know that's what people are looking at. Like you said, this is a branding thing, and it terrified me. That was one of my things when this all happened, conference realignment happened, when Texas and Oklahoma first left the Big 12, was an anchor needs to step up now. There needs to be a team that people are going to talk about, a household name that people are going to talk about now. I don't remember, I think it was before the season last year when the Big Ten and the SEC started to sequester themselves. All the top heads got together for these meetings without anyone else, right? They were having meetings. And I said, man, the ACC and the Big 12 need to rattle cages. They need to be sitting down together. They need to be having conversation, because they're going to need to figure out, how do we get stronger? What do we have? Is it going to be basketball? Maybe we're better in basketball. Maybe we're better in baseball. We need to align ourselves with what it is that's going to make us most just attractive and sexy to the network, where we know that we're going to be able to get our big pie chunks. And I feel you, again, so spot on you are. You're absolutely spot on. And that's why I say Brett Yormark is so important to the Big 12 and all the teams, even if that's poaching the ACC, which I know sounds sad. Anything, something has to be done, because otherwise you're going to be dictated. Like you guys, and I say you guys, it's like Big 12, are just right there on the cusp of having it dictated. This is the pie. This is what you're going to eat for dinner every night, and it's over. And again, it's not fair. It's not. But coming from that position of power and position of favor, and I mean, look at baseball. Look at how favorable baseball was, the SEC, and look, it didn't go perfect. It didn't go perfectly, but there's so much power brand, That's why I say the Big 12, the ACC have got to figure that out. They have to do it fast.
Yeah, and Frank, you mentioned the 11 and the 5 and 11 model and all those things. If you think about it, you think about it from an executive position, a television executive, and you're looking at these different models, and you look and you see, well, this model here means that in late October or November we could have Alabama and Georgia playing for second place, third place, or we could have over here on this side West Virginia and Utah playing for their spot. So you look at it from that perspective. That other model, he's correct. I mean, you don't the money people are going to want Georgia, Alabama. I mean, that's obvious. It's a brand thing, like you said. So I think, again, a commissioner in the Big 12 needs to be careful about what they wish for. And, and I think they have to understand, too, and I think we can see that, they're not really bargaining from they don't have a strong poker hand here. And, I think you hate to say this, but maybe grab what they can, and hope for the best,
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Do you guys feel
if you have us on your podcast?
Hey, we need to do that. Seriously. You guys feel like regular season games mean as much anymore with the advent of the college football playoff? And I asked that when we look at Ohio State. I mean, they lost to Michigan. I mean, do you guys feel like they carry the same weight? I mean, obviously they're still fun, all of that, but do you feel the same about it, or have we lost something?
Yeah, I don't really feel the same about it, but and again, in past discussions, we talk about from a West Virginia perspective, for example, those games probably mean more to us than say in Alabama, for example, because at the beginning of the year, Alabama's number 1, Texas is number 2, Georgia's number 3, Ohio State's 4, Michigan's 5, et cetera, et cetera. West Virginia is 45th. They win 6 straight games, they may crack the top 25. They lose a game, boom, we're back down to 45th. Alabama starts out number 1. They lose a game, they drop down to 5, and then before the end of the season, they're back up to 2. So, I think they mean a little more to us, more so than the blue bloods. But I don't, not like they used to. No.
That's where I worry about like the fiscal standing and a lack of parity becoming the order of the day as we go forward.
Yeah. I think we've all concerned about that is that, and I've said this many times, just want an even playing field, the money and all that, just make it even, just make an even playing field there. And I know, of course, the SEC, Big Ten are saying, oh, wait a minute, we're going to generate a lot more of this money. We should get a bigger pie. And, to a degree, they're right. But again, I still feel like if you get everybody involved, that pie is going to be bigger, for everybody, including them. So I've said this. I hope that some cooler heads prevail about this. It doesn't turn into a power grab, more than anything else over the sport itself, and what it is, and what it can be. Because I think we talked about that NFL model. I think it'd be awesome. I mean, I think I would absolutely love that. I mean, and you look at the NFL model, and you look at the revenue that they've generated over the years and the way they've grown that business is unbelievable. I mean, the NFL rakes in billions, and because of the way they've done it. And I'm sure you're like the rest of us. I'm sitting here on a playoff weekend, and Kansas City and Minnesota are playing. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it. And I think that if we had that model in college, people would be watching games they may not normally watch, and it may be of interest to watch West Virginia and Pitt, or Oklahoma, Texas, which those are interesting anyway. But it may be interesting to more people if you do it that way. So I just hope that again they look out for the whole picture and not just this power thing with themselves.
I'm scared of this full share thing. What is it? 20.5, 20.8 million is that full share, right? That full revenue share. And then I wonder how many schools are going to be able to hit the full shares. How many schools, I hate to use this term, how many schools are going to have to mortgage themselves just to get to where they need to be able to even, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's already, these brokerage companies and people like that are getting in line trying to, persuade these colleges, let's take care of your money for you. We can grow it for you. And that's scary. I mean, that's a scary thought.
Yeah. I look at it this way, guys, that, trying to win this battle, so to speak, or war on money terms. If you get too far, there's only a handful of schools that are going to be able to do that. And for the most part, they're already doing it. But if you flip that coin over, there are still a variety of things, many things from a traditional football perspective or basketball perspective that still rules the day at the end of the day. And that is having really good coaching, coaches that mine the recruits, the portal, to bring in the kinds of people that fit their culture and then coach them up, and that there is a pride of school. There is the hard-nosed abilities that come out. It's very clear. That's one of the issues that is really important to a school like West Virginia, and that, even if you don't win every game, and you won't, the other team says we were in a battle. Those things haven't changed, 70 years ago. They were there. And I think that's the case. And the powers that be, by moving to this national championship model, has taken a model that was, at the end of the season, there are 20, 25, 30 winners because those teams won their bowl game. Now, where unless you win the national championship, you had a bad year. And so I think we've got to we've got to feel comfortable, I think, not only as fans, but also as athletic directors, presidents, chancellors, donors, that only a handful of schools are going to be able to play this big money game on a sustainable basis. And, we had two great examples last year of teams that have not been known for their great football, Indiana and Arizona State, do the kinds of things that lead to greatness, solid coaching, good players, and they won games. And we all know that if things had gone a different way, a lot of calls didn't go their way. Arizona State would have gone farther than what they did last year in the college playoff. And so I agree with Greg, as almost I always do, that from a practical point of view, the pie will be bigger if we think about the collective. But I think the reality is, financially, the pie is pretty damn good right now with the way we have it. And the Big Ten and the SEC are going to put a stranglehold on it to make sure that it continues that way. And I can tell you that no matter what the Big 12 and ACC thinks, I can tell you what the Big 10 and the SEC wants in the 16 team playoff. They want to be able to dominate that and be able to create an unlevel playing field. We want a level playing field. They want an unlevel playing field that advantages them.
I mean, but, and again, though, I feel like that's the way that any commissioner, any conference should feel, right? That they want something that works for them. And again, please, guys, don't think that I'm just taking up for the SEC, because I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. It's just, it goes back to, I guess, what he said earlier was, how does everybody come together? Everybody wants the same thing. It's just that haves and the have-nots, everything's come down to that brand recognition, that name, where, if you're not a team that is going to get those eyes that they didn't cherry pick already, how do you make it marketable? And that's why I keep saying, like, the ACC and the Big 12 have to come together to figure out how do they fight back, because otherwise they will get steamrolled. Even if it's not fair, how do you stop it?
I just don't think it's going to happen. And the answer is because they saw what happened to the Pac-12. And the Big 12 and the ACC don't want what happened to the Big 12 to happen to them. And so what you have here is you've got 4 boats on water. You can see them. You can see them out on the lake, but they're 4 separate boats, and they're not in the same Navy. And so, at least personally, I can speak for myself. I've come to the point that I just want West Virginia to do really well, and all this other stuff, we're just not going to really have control over. And it may well be that no matter what the Big Ten and the SEC wants, you got to remember the avenue now for the House settlement is through the courts. It's a matter of justice. And that revenue sharing is going to go into place. That revenue sharing would never have gotten into place if the Big Ten and the SEC are in charge of that. But they're not in charge. This is through the court system. And we've had several people on the show, Sean, really smart people who believe that once that revenue model goes into effect, it is going to make it better for schools like IU, Kansas State, West Virginia, because everybody's got to play within that. And you're correct. And it doesn't get talked about enough. And that is, not all schools are going to be able to make that threshold. And in fact, we've said this on the show, and people still look at me like I'm nuts. There's a myth that football pays for other sports. And for 75% of major colleges in this country, football can't pay for itself. It has to have funds from student fees. It has to have funds from the university. Some of these programs are subsidized up to 80% by non-athletic revenues. And so, but for schools like West Virginia that are well managed, that house settlement could go a long way. So I just think we're going to have to pick our spots. And the one last thing I'll say, and it's not a criticism, and people get mad at me, doing is saying, here's a mirror. Here's a mirror, look in the mirror. When the Pac-12 went out of business, right? Big Ten got in there, and they got the schools they wanted. They wanted Los Angeles, that market. So it was really critical for them to get USC and UCLA. They wanted the Pacific Northwest. So it was really important for them to get Washington and Oregon. They're done. They didn't want the San Francisco market. They didn't want Cal. They didn't want Stanford. ACC took them. When the Pac-12 went out of business, what did we do? We had the leftovers. Now, I'm not saying that that's a negative thing. I'm not saying it. But we could not have gotten USC, could not have gotten UCLA, Oregon, and Washington in the Big 12. Before that, when we needed to expand, when Oklahoma and Texas left, SEC took as you said, they took the two marquee programs in the Big 12, the most national championships, right? Big Ten had already taken Nebraska, and then those teams left for the SEC, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Texas. What did we get? Cincinnati, that went to the Group of Five after the Big East went into demise. Central Florida, that had never been in a major conference. BYU, that had not been in a major conference. They were in the Mountain West, right? And Houston had not been in a major conference since 1996, when the Southwest Conference dissolved. The SEC didn't want them. The Big 12 didn't want. Big 12 passed on Rice, TCU, and Houston. And so what did the Big 12 do? The Big 12 now has Houston, TCU. When the Big 12 went down to 8, when Colorado left, Nebraska left the Big 12, Missouri and Texas A&M left for the SEC, right? They took Baylor, they took Texas, they took Texas Tech, and I'm missing another one. Who else did they take? They didn't take SMU. SMU was another one that left the Southwest Conference. So if you look at this from not from an emotional perspective, but just black and white, look in the mirror, what's going on here? It's almost suggests to me that we used to talk about the Group of Five. Well, if you look at the conferences, do we really have a Power Four, or do we have a Power Two and a Group of Two? Do we have 3 levels with the Group of Five, not in the second level, but in the third level? And money is making that happen, and the media money is fueling that, along with donor money. And so, again, the conclusion I come to is that we can't fight that. That's just the way it is. There's nothing we can do to change that. If I'm the athletic director of West Virginia, I can't change that. If I am the commissioner of the Big 12, I can't change that. I made the decision to bring in Cincinnati and UCF, right? And so I think you just have to pick your fights and just focus on the traditional factors that create outstanding athletic programs, and not get so caught up in this other stuff because it's outside of our control.
You know, totally. If I can say this, hearing you say that kind of hurts, just because it almost feels like it's just that, like, we got to do what we got to do type thing, you know? And again, I love the Big 12, and it makes me nervous. If there's one thing I want to say, because you just so eloquently just brought up sports and money and, you know, a lot of the misconceptions. I know that when this $20.8 million, again, that's the cap, but whatever the revenue share has to be for these schools, they're going to be victims. And, you know, you used the term earlier, non-revenue generating sports. I have friends that are at other schools, other colleges, that have already openly told me that they have made it clear that certain sports are going to go away. It's just not going to be a sustainable model. Yeah. Or they're going to have to move to a club sports model. And there's not going to be the same scholarships that there were for these kids. And I just hope we don't financially, as football, not even as football fans, but I hope football itself does not price out and rob kids that have looked forward to getting out of whatever their situation was, or have looked forward to wearing that jersey or whatever it is on their body for that school that they've longed after for so many years. I hope it doesn't cost the chance for our young people.
Yeah, and you hope, again, you hope that they look at it from this, open perspective, that it's going to affect a lot. You know, it's going to be more than, well, WVU can't compete. You know, like you said, you're going to be taking opportunities away from kids who otherwise will never get those opportunities, and you start eliminating sports it drags down the whole institution. And I think you got to look at it also from the perspective. People are going to say, well, they're getting paid. That's what's the problem. Well, that's not the problem. And the fact that you're taking opportunities away from people, that impact has to be looked at. I mean, because it's going to happen. I think we can already see it happening in places like you said. You already see it, and that's the sad part of all of it is that you're going to make lots of money, but look over here. You're going to live in this fancy split level home while you got people over here in a double wide trailer. And that's the sad part of it all. And you hope, and I don't have a lot of hope, but I do have hope that again they look at it from a global viewpoint as opposed to what's best for us right this second. And I know that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're in the power position. It's a hard thing to say. Well, let's take care of these guys over here. That's a hard thing to do. But hopefully you look at it from a little bit different perspective. Everybody involved, and you don't lose. You give kids opportunities, and of course that comes from a high school coach that you need them involved in those type of things. And it's sad if it doesn't happen, and if they start cutting programs, that's a bad thing, no matter what happens.
Yeah, we went through that at Michigan State, where they cut the swimming and diving teams, both men and women, and I was involved in that. It's terrible. But let me just say one thing: that money doesn't always win out. I'm looking at the numbers on collegiate baseball. Murray State is in the super regionals. Their budget this year was $858,000. That's a lot of money. But it's Murray State in Western Kentucky, $858,000. They beat Ole Miss to get to the Super Regionals. Ole Miss's budget is $10 million.
Yeah.
So again, it's the classic issues of athletic success, and we shouldn't get so caught up that money is going to automatically drive success. Many times it does, but in a lot of cases it doesn't. And now we're going to have to see if, as you said, Sean, if will Texas Tech have bought themselves a softball national championship? If they win,
transfer class, they bought them up in football.
Oh, big time! Texas Tech is number one in the portal, and so we'll see what happens in football. So.
Sean, before you go, I know one of the things Frank had mentioned to you, want to mention real quickly here before we get off for the night. Oklahoma, Texas football. What are you seeing? You have a grasp on it with all the transfer stuff?
I tell you, so with Texas, it's kind of ironic. Texas is bringing back, I think, 45%. 45% of what we had last year is coming back, which is painful, obviously, because, we're replacing everything, offensive line, defensive line. That's huge. On the same token, you had that the year before and things worked out. So the transfer portal, and my spies have not got back to me yet with some of my Texas information like I have OU information. With OU, man, this is such a special year, right? You have Ben Arbuckle, right? John Mountaineer coming in from Washington, all of that, huge expectations. Jackson Arnold, he's gone. He's transferred out to Auburn with Hugh Freeze down there. So this is obviously a mastodon prove-it year for Brent Venables, right? He's got to bring his A game. He's got to do something, because if he doesn't, I truly do believe that Joe Castiglione and family out there are going to tell him that, on to greener pastures, good sir. I know that we watched an offensive line from Oklahoma last year that was absolutely porous and abysmal. I believe that offense averaged 16 points per game last year. So they have nowhere to go but up. I have questions about things like, can Mountaineer be successful in a SEC? It's possible. We'll see. I also know one of the big things that bothers me, and you guys, I would love to know y'all's take on this, on if maybe I sound like a crazy person. You guys got Zach Alley, right? Defensive coordinator from Oklahoma. Zach Alley went down there to West Virginia. I think he's going to be a great addition with Rich Rodriguez and friends. But I'll say this, Brent Venables has said that he is going to be the defensive coordinator this year. I have a hard time. It's a dichotomy, man. It's hard to serve two masters and to serve them well, right? You have to be the head coach, and I always feel like it's hard for a head coach to be a secondary guy. Now, I put mad respect on his name. He came from Clemson out there with Dabo, defensive mastermind. I take nothing away from him. I've discussed how I love to see how he uses the cheetah position to be, he finds a way to utilize a guy that's so fast, that's so nimble, that can be such a pain. I can tell you that Quinn Ewers learned about that last year. But I think that when you're in his position and your seat is hot, you got to make sure that you're doing everything that you need to. He has a good supporting cast of defensive guys down there that hopefully help him out, and it's defensive coordinator by committee. But I have some concerns. That schedule for Oklahoma is a mastodon, man. That thing is beast mode. I want to say they got number 1 or 2 hardest schedule in the nation. I could be wrong, but it's totally up there. OU has a tough road to hoe, and they have a lot to prove to themselves. They have a lot to prove to their fans. We'll see. What do they play? Michigan, second game, something like that? I mean, we're going to know who they are real quick. So finding their identity with a lot of transfers is going to be key. And I don't know, man. OU is they are definitely a question mark for me. Hard for me to even place them in the nation. Texas has transferred in everybody using Texas money. Texas, I feel like, was SEC ready before Oklahoma was. Already knew what the Texas grinder was going to be. So that's a question I'll be able to better answer soon. But with OU, I do have big, high hopes. I have high hopes for OU. I want to see them be successful. And I hope that John Matier is everything that everybody said that he could be.
I think from experience, Frank, we can say that the head coach trying to be a coordinator usually don't work out too well. We had that situation here with Neil Brown liking to be in charge of the offense, and you can see a lot of times during the game that really was difficult. I mean, you can see in some of the play calling, some of the game decisions that were happening. That's a tough thing to do. So yeah, I would be as a fan, I'd be concerned about that as well. That's kind of scary. That usually doesn't work out too well.
I was hoping that you'd chime in on that, like I said, because I knew you guys would know. And that bothers me. A lot of OU fans are behind it because, they look at what he did at Clemson. And hey, I love that people are looking at his body of work. But I've been around a lot of football coaches. I've been around a lot of football for the last decade. And same as you. And like I said, the only word I could think of is that it's a true dichotomy. You can't split yourself to make it work like you need it to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see, man.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do. Well, I think, Frankie, any last questions before we get off for the night? We're about out of time, so I'll toss it over to you if you have anything else.
No, very invigorating, Sean, as usual. A+.
Absolutely.
Can I say something real quick? It's
Absolutely.
a Rich Rodriguez thing. You guys are going to hate me, but I'm going to say it. Back in March, Rich Rodriguez, he was at a press conference, and he said something that makes me crazy. This shirt that I'm wearing, this D-lineman shirt, right? Linemanprobs.com, sorry for the plug, but I have to because NIL, right? He said he is banning guys dancing on TikTok. Oh, Rich, you got to let that go, brother. You got to let that go. Branding, NIL deals, the way to be able to get these is you have to have a huge following. You have to have a mastodon of a social media, And so part of that is being trendy and dancing and doing goofy stuff. And you got to back off of that and let those guys do that. Otherwise, people are going to pick other schools because they're not going to be able to get the following they need to for NIL. It's important. It's a part of the bag. And I know he's a hard-nosed football guy. He wants old school football. I believe that if he could play the wishbone out there, my God, he'd have West Virginia lined up in the wishbone. We'd see swinging gate formations. It'd be wild. He's going to have to give on this one.
I think 15, 20 years ago, course, we didn't have TikTok and all that then, but he would have never banned it then. But now he done turned into an old man. I don't know what's going on with Rich. We'll talk to him about that. And I'm going to tell him. That's what LaShaun Pryor told us to tell you. You need to get off that TikTok shit and let those kids be kids, man. That's what they like. Sean, appreciate it. And for everybody out there still watching, make sure you tune in to Prior to the Snap, the podcast he does with Cassie Stevens. So much fun listening. You can tell by listening to him. Very, very well spoken and energetic, and so much fun to listen to. We can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. We appreciate you.
It was a privilege.
Oh man, privilege is all ours, and we look forward to doing it again too. So don't forget us.
I promise I will not. You guys take care.
All right, John. Thank you very much, man. Energetic guy, man. That's fun.
And we said this, I think, the last time. Sean's life's been, as all of our lives, up and down, and he's not only walked the path, he's created opportunities for himself, and he's a wonderful role model for anyone. You got a passion, and you have the ability to be able to be what I call generative, make it happen. He's a beautiful example of a person who is well known in his community because he has made it so. And God bless him. He's a great person and a wonderful guest.
Yep. And one of the things I enjoyed about this tonight, most of the guests we've had on have that West Virginia connection to some degree and have painted a fairly rosy picture. I think he gave us a real honest assessment of the way SEC Big Ten views what's going on. And that, although we may not like it, it was refreshing. Yeah.
I mean, he's in the middle of it. He understands it. I've talked to him about it's tough to be, a Texas fan in Oklahoma, I guess. There are people like him, but because there's such strong support for OU and OSU there. But, the point you made several times is I think a lesson for us all. And that is that there are more benefits to be gained if we take a collective approach, if we think about the whole rather than just about ourselves. But so much in today's society is really about me. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, losing Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, that came out of nowhere. I mean, it was not even talked about, and then it's a done deal. The Big 12, the Pac-12 going out of business literally overnight. And it's all about me. It's really hurting the sport and the evolution of the sport. But it's
and I think too. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The other point we talked about was, the impact it has on lesser programs, on non-revenue programs. And you mentioned, was it Murray State? You mentioned there in the baseball, and they beat. Who'd you say they beat? Texas A&M or Mississippi State?
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. Ole Miss with a $10 million budget on their baseball, them with $850,000. And that's true. Those teams can rise up and beat those teams. However, when you start cutting into revenues, it's a lot easier for somebody that has a $10 million revenue to take out a couple million to keep girls softball going than it is for somebody like Murray State to take, $150,000 out of their $850,000. So they're going to say, we just can't do that, and that's where you're going to lose those programs. And that's, that's a sad thing. And I hope, again, I don't know if they will look at it from the humanistic side, but you hope they do anyway. All right. Well, we're overtime, Frank, and we got next week's guest. You want to go ahead and talk about that for a second?
Yeah. If Darren could slap that up. There it is. And a name that is well known, Chris Pecan, who took Ron Wolfley's. He was behind Ron Wolfley at fullback, and when Ron left, Chris went in, and we're going to try to get some film of that. I think it was that Louisville game. I think it was at 86. I think it was in 86, where he had 3 touchdowns. Game of a lifetime. Chris is a great guy, easy to talk with, just very extroverted. And we appreciate Mark Parsons for setting that up. And Chris is going to be our guest next week. So we go from talking to a guy from Oklahoma City who has no connection to WVU to a lifer. Once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer with Chris.
There you go. Yep, that'll be a lot of fun. And as we sign off for tonight, we appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you another great show next week. And I want to again remind you, check out Prior to the Snap. Go to your podcast, listen to that. So much fun to listen to it today. Good stuff. And even if it's topics that you're not overly interested in, still fun to listen to. That's what I learned today. So anyway, we appreciate everybody for tuning in to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now, brought to you by the New River Network and the Voice of College Football. And we'll have a little promo here Frank does at the end of the show. So without further ado, Frank, I'll let you go to your promo. We appreciate you again for tuning in. Good night, everybody. See you next week.
Hi, everyone. Frank Fear here from Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. And we're pleased to be part of the Voice of College Football National Network. Mark Rogers and staff have done a great job with the network, and it's constantly adapting and expanding to bring content to you. Many of you are already following us on X and Facebook and Instagram. And if you're not, here are the URLs, the links to go to and take advantage of all the great content that's there for you. Even if you do that, you may not know some of the new doings at the Voice of College Football Network. One is a new podcast options that already thousands of people are taking advantage of. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast networks, and we encourage you to do that. Perhaps the biggest drum roll is the new Voice of College Football website with plenty of content, everything that you want to enjoy and can enjoy about college football. And remember, one thing that makes the Voice of College Football Network different is that we're 24/7, 12 months a year. It never ends. It's college football in the winter, the spring, the summer, and of course, during the fall. We also want to announce, and Mark Rogers again and staff have done a great job with this, a relationship with Amazon.com. And here's Mark to tell you more about it.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
Well, that's it for now. Let me thank you for your loyalty. The Voice of College Football Network. This is Frank Fear for Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. Hope to see you on our channel and other channels, VOCF. Take care, everybody.